Welcome, welcome everyone. Yeah, just mute Octavio. Okay, so here we are, one more virtual facilitation practice. And as we used to say, we created this space almost 3 years ago in the beginning of the pandemic to help people get away with some knowledge and some connection to handle what was happening. But we saw this space as a very fruitful way to get people connected and create new stuff and learn things. And we have the habit of inviting nice people as guest facilitators. So I'm delighted to have Mark here. I know he's one of the busiest guys on the planet, but he made the time to be with us. So welcome, Mark. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. And the floor is yours.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Fernando. And I apologize because this was going to happen on Tuesday, but that didn't work out. But I'm so glad everyone could kind of make themselves available to have this discussion on Friday. I've had a very interesting career. I mean, just to give some context about why should I listen to this guy for 90 minutes or pay any attention to what he has to say? I've been in design for over 30 years. And when I started, that was graphic design, right? You know, I used to have a 14-inch mohawk and played in a punk band and played in Gilman Street and, you know, in Berkeley with Green Day and Rancid and all these bands. And that was part of a DIY community that I kind of carry with me to this day. I mean, certainly not the fashion, but it was an interesting place to be in the Bay Area where technology was growing. My graphic design skills had to pivot. So we're always constantly in a mindset of learning and then unlearning and relearning. And so as soon as I was trying to sell graphic design, everyone was buying Macintoshes and going through the desktop revolution. And then I was as I was learning my craft, I was already being outpaced by customers having access to all that stuff. And so over the years, from CD-ROM authoring and then transitioning that into Web 1.0 and 2.0, and then not being able to stay on top of all the tech stacks, somewhere along the line, I was asked to start running workshops when I was at Autodesk. And that was where my entire perception of what work and where I could add value pivoted. So I was at Autodesk when they brought in Luma Institute. So if you're aware of them, they teach human-centered design. They have a really wonderful kind of collection of methods and a mindset around a toolkit for designing thoughtful conversations. And I was also commuting 5 hours one way to get into San Francisco to work with a team that was spread across 12 time zones, from Hyderabad, Tel Aviv, Toronto, all the way to Shanghai in China and Singapore and Australia. And so I would commute for 5 hours and then go find a conference room I could close the door and talk to a Polycom from before my day should start to well after my day should end to try and orchestrate things. So I was super present to the ridiculousness of spending so much time commuting, the growing capabilities of technology, and the way in which working digitally with some of these tools can level the playing field when it comes to hearing all voices and being inclusive. If you were not in HQ, you did not have the serendipitous hallway conversations or show the thing to the VP, and therefore you were shut out of having any input, creative input into meaningful work. You were a satellite and you were pretty much just told what to do. So with that context, the last arc of my career has been becoming a lead certified instructor with Luma, and then working with Mural. It's a whiteboard tool where I'm sharing right now. You're all going to join in just a little bit, this tool. And now I'm in this very interesting role of looking at what does it mean for us to be in service of creating powerful conversations for people on and not just designers, but HR teams and strategic leadership teams. What does it mean now when technology has gotten to a certain level, but it still remains a little bit of a buffer between us being physically in the same presence? And then today we're talking about what happens when we're back in that state of some people are co-located, where for millions of years, humans, we knew how to manage people when we're all in the same room. You know, teachers, you can just move close to the troublemaker kid and they kind of calm down. And there are these natural ways of managing energy in a group that are easy to do in person. And then we've had to learn new skills from online. But now we're talking about as people are trying to go back to the office, and now we have this situation. So we're going to dig into that a little bit deeper today. We're going to do a brief check-in. I would love in the chat if people could find the Zoom chat and just share where you're joining from today, because it's always delightful and helpful as a facilitator to get a sense of the time zones. I know we've already heard for some of you it's early evening, for some of you it's early morning. So just type in the chat where you're joining from today. I appreciate that. Oh, Phoenix. It's warm there sometimes. Last time I was in Phoenix, it was 120 degrees. So we're going to break down hybrid collaboration. We're going to explore together collectively in 2 breakouts, explore some of the pain points around hybrid collaboration. And then we're going to do a modified version of a problem tree analysis. And then we're going to sum in on some insights and have some advice to share with each other by the end of this. We'll do a share out and then we'll close. And I'm happy to hang out and do a Q&A for those of you that have the time to do that. To frame our discussion today, why are we here? The topic for hybrid in particular became a really hot topic in Mural when there was an article published that was showing a scholarly run bit of evidence that was saying that working in this remote way, working in this through Zoom is destroying creativity. And a friend of mine, Elise Keith, who is the founder and CEO of Lucid Meetings, different from Lucid Chart and everything, but Lucid Meetings, she got this finding and started digging through it and said, well, this is absurd. What they asked people to do this rigorous scientific study, you would never as a facilitator do that, because of course engagement was low, and of course like it wasn't the value, the data findings were in no way related to anything that you or I would ever design or do. So of course it's just talking to people for an hour, of course it's not engaging. So we really wanted to dig in and explore ways and models and how to set up, and this is going on right now, how to set up another academic, very rigorous study. I think she's tapped into Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and so it will be a rigorous study, but the tests are going to be modeled around facilitations that are leveraging these new tools. So very interesting. So I think what we're looking for today is to kind of address this mindset of the complexity of hybrid and come up, for our purposes, some useful advice and some ways to approach it where we can be a better service to folks that are asking us to help design these things. And I think this example caught Fernando's attention and some other folks' attention. And so I just wanted to run through this quickly. I was asked for a second year to facilitate for Control the Room. Control the Room is run by Douglas Ferguson at Voltage Control in Austin, Texas. And every year he holds a summit for facilitators. So if you are a facilitator and this is something you're serious about, I would definitely look into they have all sorts of free communities and things, not to take away from this community, I think to bridge communities. I think you could get a lot of people joining that are looking for more. So it's a yes and, it's not an either or in any way. But just looking at the stats, so it's 1 day, 8 hours, 14 speakers in lightning rounds. So the way it happens is you have speaker, 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 and then a 15-minute reflection, and then maybe a break, grab a bagel, and then you go speaker, 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 and then another break that transitions into grab some lunch. And it's this high speed, almost like a nightclub, people coming up. The speakers' topics are very varied. Some of them are sharing incredibly emotional moments as a facilitator, talking about their journey. Some people are light and breezy. One guy had this wonderful thing where everyone had these cardboard boxes, and thinking outside the box, you actually start by putting a box on your head and noticing, it's hard to see, it's hard to hear. Yeah. So you actually have to cut open these openings and what happens. And so what are the anyway, these metaphors and everything. It's just a lovely, it's like breathing pure oxygen as a facilitator when you go there. But the nature of it since the pandemic is it's bifurcated into people that are not getting on planes and they're not traveling. And so last year was 100% online. This year we had about 160 people in the room in Austin. And then we had it fluctuated because some people are trying to join from Europe. Some people are going to be joining from APAC later on, but 140 to 170 people. The challenges are, one, engagement. How do you keep engagement when most of the action is happening in the room, but how do you keep the engagement online? And also, how do you bridge engagement between those two groups so there is an authentic exchange of value between the people that are travel and the people that are remote? Elegant spontaneity was something that I didn't even have as a term until this happened, because we had not seen the speakers talk. So we had to glean where we thought they might be going. And on a second mural board, my co-facilitator and I had created dozens of themes that we might be able to plug in for that 15-minute reflection that best allows us to maintain space for 3 sometimes very radical different points of view, but find that theme and plug it in. So we wanted to be responsive and not just have this entire thing baked, but to create an elegant way where we could still be spontaneous, and trying to find the right balance between under and over planning. And time was a forcing function. It just came together very quickly because of schedules and busyness. So we didn't have an opportunity to overplan, which was great. The learnings and takeaway for me was, and I'm sorry, I'm doing a lot of talking at you. I acknowledge that. We're going to get into that, but I think the context is helpful. Empower your Zoom crew. So the people that I was there to serve most directly were the people that were joining in a virtual manner over Zoom. And so right away, I got them to be okay with using the chat. I got them okay with throwing in links. I got them into the mural board. I modeled behavior on how they could be taking notes. Underneath each speaker, there was room for capturing information. So you'll see below each one of these speakers, I just left a space. And at one point, I think it was when we were just in the middle of the second round, I felt like a bee in a hive. Things were happening faster than I could screen capture from the presenter screen and drop it in. Notes were being added. Things were being tidied up. I just felt like everyone online started co-owning the space in a really incredible way. And it ended up being the true result of this artifact that then everyone could get access to was the result of everyone feeling like they had agency to help make it better. And leaving open space. There were some areas that last year we did something and we didn't have any use for it, and I left it blank, and it ended up being a fantastic opportunity. As soon as In the Room mentioned, well, we're going to be having lunch, the Zoom lit up and people were saying, oh, well, we're going to have our own break. Let's do breakouts online, and we want to have different breakouts on different topics. And so I rapidly, with my co-facilitator, created this hexadecimal grid and gave them numbers and said, okay, so like an unconference, drop in the topics that you'd like to talk about. And they self-organized around these different topics. And while people were eating, this group was coming up with insights and having these real passionate conversations, to the point where we came back, there was this huge FOMO of people in the room in Austin going, wow, what's going on online? That looks like a cool place to be. So huge learning for me around leaving open space and listening and engaging them in creating agency. And mandatory tech run. If you're ever going to try doing something like this, don't let someone say, oh, we got it figured out. You just show up and it'll work. Like you have to run through it, have some feet on the ground in the space that you can have a text back channel, etc. Okay, so if we could share the link in the chat, I'd like to get everyone into the Mural board. I'd love to see, just show of hands, how many people have ever used a whiteboard like Mural or Miro or something like that? Okay, so we're not going to do anything too, like 2 hands. I really use it. That's awesome. Okay, so I'll look down here at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can see avatars will start showing up as people use the link, and it lets me know how many people are showing up. And if anyone's having trouble, just flag it in the chat, and I'll see at some point about how to work out any kinks. But you shouldn't need to sign in or log in. Okay, now I'm going to use one of my Facilitator superpowers to summon you so we can do our check-in.
So Mark, just checking. Josephine, are you with a question, or you're just raising your hand because you love Mural?
I was just responding to the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so under the big number 1 where it says check-in, oh, here, let me do this. I can also create an anonymous visitor link, and I'll drop this in. See if this second link I dropped in there, see if that one allows everyone in. Okay, so I just want everyone to find one of these gray circles, double click on it and edit it to add your name. And then the other thing you can do is, from when you have your round note selected, there's a color menu, and it's currently gray, but if you want to, you can pick your favorite color from the menu, and I'll do the same thing here. All right. All right, and then down below, I have a fun, not serious at all, warm up for us to do. This is one we use occasionally internally, called Pick Your Nick. So if you've seen more than one movie in the 20th or 21st century, you've probably seen this actor because he seems to be in almost every movie that pops up. And he has a wide range, you know. Well, actually, some people say he's either talking very quietly or he's shouting at the top of his lungs. So he's got range, but he doesn't spend a lot of time in the middle. Nonetheless, we have some illustrations here that display a lot of emotions. And I would just invite you to grab your circle and just kind of drop it onto which one you kind of most identify with in some way. Yeah, so I kind of surprisingly enough, I was a little stressed doing this. I've been a little under the weather. I wanted to be a good presenter, but once I got here, you know, Fernando put me at ease, and now I'm feeling relaxed. So check-ins or warm-ups or energizers, there's a lot of different variations here, but we've really adopted this at Mural. Typically, if it's a team that meets on a regular basis. The warm-up activity is something you design with some intention. It might be a thoughtful question, or it might be a check-in, especially if the team has just launched a big feature or something. You might want to do kind of an emotional state of mind check-in or retrospective, kind of what is the big thing, or with magic wand, if you could change one thing about the last release. But this is a great way that I would encourage you to include as a way, as a facilitator, to kind of get a sense of where the state of the cohort is as well. No deep learning there other than having some fun. And we will be using our little colored circles again as we get into the next topic. So hybrid collaboration. I just wanted to take a moment and define what I'm referring to. It has different meanings in HR, at executive leadership. When they talk hybrid, it can mean something very rigorous around scheduling, or it could be hiring policy. It could be a lot of stuff. When I'm talking about hybrid collaboration, I'm talking about what we see in these two photos. We used to all do this, and sometimes have crazy commutes, like I mentioned, to get into a room to do this. And then we all kind of went to this, maybe not quite so sad as this one lone person, but I did kind of want a lonely image to be evocative. But and now we're coming into this reality where this used to happen, but the remote folks were pretty much ignored. And then everyone went remote, and we got this huge wave of empathy and excitement about the possibility. But now we're heading into this situation where we're starting to see this notion of, well, we're all here and you're elsewhere. Like the remote folks are just somewhere else. And that creates, because of human nature, because of old habits die hard, it creates a natural imbalance in the way participation happens. So people in the room, we have found through our research, no surprise, there's a lot more discussion, right? So there's a lot more conversation going on when people are in the room together, but not a lot of generation or capture, right? So sticky notes and that type of thing, people have really kind of wound back all of that participatory thing, and they're just getting into, let's just talk at each other again. Whereas online, there's less conversation, but there's sometimes a ton of generation, which if you look at that board from the control of the room, is evidence. In fact, there were several neurodivergent people that reached out to me afterwards, and they were so appreciative because they said, in meetings, it is just beyond me to try and interject and have a voice. But when I had a space, I was at home. I was able to communicate. I was able to think. I was able to contribute. So it's very interesting there. So this is the question where we're going to explore and get into some of the pain points and how we can be proactive around building better practices. So using your circle, I just wanted to do a quick visual check-in on a couple things. So when do you feel more effective as a facilitator? So if you can go find your circle and drop it somewhere on the line. So on one end, we have on-site. As a facilitator, I really feel effective when I'm there in the room running the show, or online. And if you're somewhere in the middle, drop it somewhere in the middle. Then if you select your note and do copy and paste, Control C, Control V, make a copy of your note and do the same thing down below. Do you feel more effective when you're solo running the whole show, or when you have a co-facilitator or someone to trade off with? And then for those of you that have completed that down below, I'd love you to think just for a moment on the one word that comes to mind when someone says hybrid. Just don't overthink it. I'm just curious about what is that one word? Yeah, hard, power, both and. Disability justice, yeah. The worst of both worlds. Yeah, that one resonates. dealing with customers that are saying, well, you know, we have all the tech in our office space and we've all learned how to do this remote thing. So the hybrid, it should be easy. And I'm like, no, it's exponentially harder. So how do people see each other? Where do they work? It's just the AV, the audiovisual microphones in the space that don't echo the Zoom. There's a meeting can crash and burn in the first 3 minutes easily in hybrid if you don't really map it out. Complex, huge yellow sticky note for complex. I agree. So I find it interesting just as a little reflection there. So as our cohort, working visually, you know, it's just interesting to notice that a lot of us have find equal effectiveness. I might interpret it, say we're equally effective in the room or remote, but then that trails off, and some people are finding that they're way more effective. And I think that will be interesting to explore as we tease out in what ways are we actually more powerful if we're facilitating remotely, even in a hybrid situation. All right, I'm going to pause. Any questions? I'll look for raised Zoom hands before we go into our breakouts and our activities, or any thoughts, reflections before we jump in. I love it. And just looking in the chat as well. Yes, exponentially harder. Yeah.
Mark, this is Amanda. I have a super quick question. The voltage control in the room, was it only the Zoom folks that had access to the mural, or was it both roomies and Zoomies that were in mural?
Yeah, there was a link, and people, and that was interesting. There was, I knew some of the presenters, and so I tried to coordinate with them, at least let them know there is this other experience. But yeah, the link was available. There was, what started happening when that FOMO moment happened is people were then taking pictures of what was happening in the room and sharing it. So the online people started to get some visibility into what it actually looked like, and some exciting moments, and people doing the fun table work. They started to get visibility into that because the people there were starting to share and contribute. And then we were taking events and things that were happening in the chat and screen capturing them and throwing it so people could get this interesting mosaic of the chat that's happening, you know, written online. And it warmed up in the second half, but the inertia for in the room was very much like, where's my coffee? Where's my bagel? There's the presenter. So all their focus was on the stage, but it started leveling out towards the end. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to summon everyone again. So we're moving into this third column here, and we don't have to get into the details and read this stuff. I think what's most important is this before, during, and after graphic, which I'll spend a little bit of time on. So essentially what we're looking for is we want to look at, as a facilitator, the process of designing, conducting, facilitating, and then kind of extending that experience beyond, looking at it in a little more detail, and then being thoughtful and generative around pain points that arise at each one of these things. We did the one word around hybrid, and it's complex and it's hard, and it can seem overwhelming. So this graphic is something that we've started building internally. It's not exhaustive, but I think it'll help us as we look across, break it down into small enough pieces so that we can start thinking more thoughtfully and not get overwhelmed by the complexity. In general, and I think this is, this is a standard model. We all think about this as we're designing a facilitation or designing some collaboration, is there's stuff that happens before. There is the showtime, the thing and the stuff you have to worry about when everyone's there in that synchronous mode. And then there's what happens after. If you've been hired and the client is looking for an artifact, or if you're running sessions like this as part of your own business, there's this wanting to have a continuity and extend the conversation, right? So it's not just showtime and hope that it'll all work out. There's a lot of stuff that happens before, during, and after. And our breakouts, we're going to go into 3 breakouts. And so each breakout is going to look at one of these larger monolithic chunks, but then get into some of these details. So there's stages, right? Even when we're talking about the notion of what happens before, there's a stage of where you're planning, and then you're trying to set up, and then you're preparing as you're getting close. And then down below that, you see there are some cards. So in the planning, you're trying to define what is the problem, what are the outcomes we want, who are we going to invite, a stakeholder map, and even understanding who should be in this session to begin with. Determining how you're going to meet, as if you're fortunate enough to be in an organization where you control the tool stack. You know, I'm most comfortable with Mural and Zoom. So for me, my preparation goes way down if I can just assume everyone can use Zoom and I can use Mural as a space. That removes a lot of complexity for me. But if you go in and said, yeah, we're going to use some folks have WebEx, but they can't use this. Some folks are using Teams. So if it gets into these waters, then it actually can, it doesn't get a little more complicated. It gets a lot more complicated with invitations and even the logistics, right? Set up, actually thinking about the flow, how are you going to divide up the time, and then preparation. You actually have to invite people. You have to set expectations. There may be pre-work that you assign, that kind of. Then when we shift from all that work you did before into what happens during, you've got to initiate the session, right? People are coming in from all sorts of vectors. Some people are in the room, some people are joining on Zoom, some people have technical difficulties, some people have a car breakdown, right? In a physical world or virtual world, there's still this moment where you're trying to take people from whatever they were doing before and bring them into the space. Getting them warmed up, preview work, collaborating. So setting up the engagement, bringing people in, and then synthesizing, right? It's not just getting people to externalize. You actually, in that session, you're trying to reach some type of outcome. And then after, you've got to really conclude or somehow bring all that effort to some type of conclusion. And evaluating how effective it was. You might do a retrospective, setting up next steps so people are clear on who's got to do what and in what time frame. Consolidate. So taking all of this stuff and packaging it up, handing it back to your client, or getting it into Asana if there's some decisions, and Asana is where your source of truth is. Sharing out. Sometimes you might have senior leadership that needs a report out, right? So there's some way where you want to guide them. Maybe it's Loom. We use Loom quite a bit at Mural as a way to just walk through a workshop and talk and have a packaged video with a timeline that allows comments and feedback. Is a really wonderful way to then package this stuff up and make it more accessible to people that weren't there for the whole 8 hours. And then continue, like follow up and what do you do? So those are the kind of the 3 areas, and within them, the stages and then steps. So with that, I wanted to show an example. This is how we're going to be working. This is what it'll look like. Group 1, for example, will go into breakout 1, and I've copied over the steps that are related to each one of those 3 chunks. So you're just going to be focusing on the steps and stages for your breakout. And then down below, I have some kind of light pink buff colored notes. And this is where, as a breakout group, you can either generate silently and just spend a couple minutes generating some ideas and then sharing out. You could divide and conquer and have people say, I'll work over here on column 1, 2, 3. But what you're trying to do is think about the pain points that show up, or the pain points you get present to in the planning phase and with some of those prompts. So for example, determine how to meet. One of the pain points is even knowing where people are going to be at the time of the meeting. Is that a day when everyone's in the office, or is that one of the work from home days? And are people traveling? And does that executive that's, on vacation, where is everyone? So other pain points that might show up, managing distractions. You see some examples here. I've also, in each breakout group, given you some icons. So feel free to use your own or use those as a visual way as you're having the discussion to either yes and as you're noticing people adding things down below. And be prepared by the time we come back. It's going to be quick. It's going to be about 15 minutes for this first breakout. Be prepared to or have some idea of which pain point you really want to focus on and advance into our second breakout. If I zoom out here, you will see the board is laid out vertically. So this breakout group work area runs vertically, and you'll see that we have two breakouts, the top box, and there's a second box below. So don't worry about the second box below for now. But in the top box, we've got three columns: breakout 1, breakout 2, and breakout 3. And so Fernando has already set up the breakout rooms, and you will be randomly assigned to breakout 1, 2, or 3. Give yourself a minute or two to say hi, but then be mindful. I'm going to set the timer, Mural. Be mindful that we will be coming back in about 15 minutes. So quickly get into generative. Remember to look at what other people might be typing, because that'll spark things in your mind. And then I'm going to pause and say, any questions on the brief before we send you into the breakouts? Thumbs up, pretty much good to go. All right, you guys are pros. Okay, so Fernando, I would say open up the breakout rooms, and I may pop around from room to room just to and Fernando, I'm sure will as well.
Okay, here we go.
Welcome back. All right. So I wanted to do a very short, brief, tight share out. So how was that discussion?
Great.
It's good. Okay. Exciting. I can tell just standing back and looking in the mural. I dipped into rooms just because I didn't know if the lack of generation early on was over politeness, right? I'm going meta for a second about as a facilitator, as I'm watching, I'm like, so I didn't know if people aren't generating because either the verbal discussion is going great guns and it's not getting captured, which could happen, or there's this over politeness around, no, you go first, no, you know, how should we do this? And so those are my cues to dip in and just listen. But I was delighted to see in breakout 3, I had done something with a visual that was cognitively, it didn't make sense. And I didn't realize it didn't make sense. So sometimes just that dipping in and understanding if it's not going in a particular place, just trying to unblock it. So thank you for letting me visit each of your rooms. Hopefully you had enough time just to start to get a sense and share between all of the participants what some of the pain points were. We're going to be able to go a little bit into all of them, but really the next section that I'm going to show you what we're going to do. The next section, you're going to want to pick one. You're going to want to focus on one. Now, in your own time, you're welcome to run this second exercise over and over and over again and keep plugging different things into it. But I think for the purposes of our session just today and looking at this kind of micro method of problem tree analysis, you're just going to want to pick on one. So agree on one that that the whole team says, yeah, that's worth talking about. Okay. So let me summon you in the mural so I can show you an example of what we're going to do now. So I have a little kind of like a dragonfly diagram here. And you see I have these red numbers, which is generally the order in which you want to have this conversation. So I did that because it's not necessarily left to right, right? So we're actually going to start with the pain point in the middle. So whichever pain point you nominate as a breakout group, drop that in the center. Then the next conversation is thinking about what are some of the things that contribute to this pain point happening, right? So if the pain point is we're never sure where people are going to be at that time, what are some of the causes? Well, we don't know people's locations sometimes. The org chart is a little opaque, or we don't know the national where time zones and everything. So here are just a couple causes. Down below, you're welcome to do a ton of generation, right? So down below, you can just spend, a minute or two and generate, and then nominate a couple, two that you think are key. But you want to end up with two things that cause this pain point, and then you want to have the conversation around two effects. So, for example, we're never sure where people are going to be at that time. We sometimes book the wrong size room, right? So these are things that happen because of this pain point. Sometimes we're scrambling at the last minute to get a bigger room because suddenly everyone's like, well, yeah, you didn't know I was here. Yeah, all of it. The whole team has been here on a 3-day thing. So we're all here. You're like, oh no. Or people arrive unprepared. So you want to have a discussion in that. The pain point, some causes, some effects, and that is by way of getting you to where we want you to be for the share out, which is some advice would be. So our advice to others is to avoid this pain point, be mindful of this, or here's a best practice, okay? And that'll be the nature of the share out when we come back. So I'll pause there. Any questions on the way the second discussion is structured in your breakouts? Thumbs up if it all makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to put another 15 minutes on the timer in Mural, and Fernando will open up all the breakout rooms again. And remember, you're working in columns, right? So if you were working in breakout one above, you just decide on your pain point and take it straight down into the cause effect advice section right down below. And same for breakout 2 and breakout 3. All right.
Okay, here we go. Romy, welcome.
I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm so late, but I wanted to see you in action. Nice to see you again, Mark.
Hey, good to see you too.
Yeah.
You're welcome to jump into, so I can give you a quick overview. So we're having a discussion around hybrid, and to take that big gnarly topic and break it down, we're looking in three different breakout rooms across the things that you do to design this, the things that you do before the session, the things that you do during the session, and then the things that you do afterwards. And then within them, they looked at generated some pain points. And
Mark, quickly,
now,
the timer in the mirror is not working.
oh yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. 15 and boom, there we go. Cool.
Okay.
So then down below, they're taking one pain point and doing a little problem tree analysis. So what are some things that cause that pain point, and what are some outcomes to try and arrive at some advice? So if you have an affinity towards kind of all the prep stuff, logistics, that kind of thing, or if it's the day of show, kind of how you balance participation during hybrid, breakout 2 might be an interesting one to join.
If it's cool for you and it doesn't ruin dynamics, I'd love to be in the during session. I'd love to geek out on hybrid stuff.
Sure,
Okay.
yes.
So I'll send you there, Romy, to room 2.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Thank you. Mika. Please.
It's okay. I'd like
Sometimes
to
they don't come.
yeah.
Talk to Mark.
I'm about what, 100, 200
Yeah,
miles? Hello.
Hi.
I'm down near Portland, which I think is about what, 200 miles south of Vancouver, right? Yeah.
Same city of Mara.
And have you ever gone to the big Lego show in Seattle? Have you ever been? Oh, it's pretty cool. My son is 16 now, and this is his first year where he's building a mock, my own creation. He's building with a couple friends a big Star Wars thing that they're going to take to our local show here. So
Mhm.
all sorts of fun stuff up there. Vancouver is beautiful. That whole area.
Yeah, we are going to Whistler late on this month.
Wonderful. Do you ski or snowboard at all?
I ski.
You
Best year in the family.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's much easier. I never learned when I was small. So as an adult, it's scary because you're so far away from the ground if you fall. But as a kid, you fall over, no big deal, and you get used to that motion.
So you get there, you open this. This is the handpan holding.
Oh.
Yep, set it up. Okay, maybe I'll share the screen just to capture.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
You want to share on your side, Mark?
Oh sure, I'll share. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forget coming in and out of breakout rooms. It breaks that share. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm still a little bit low-key from the cold and stuff. So I'm running at about 85%.
Yeah, I know the feeling. That's why you work in partnership always, co-facilitating.
No, and I really appreciate it. It's such a delight just to be able to kind of focus on the presentation and not the breakout rooms and all the logistics and tech support and everything.
Yeah, Romeo will be with us in the next practice, and Elise will be after her in April. So
wonderful.
yeah, we had a very nice lineup in this winter spring.
Oh, that's great. Elise Keefe?
Yeah, she'll be running the experiment with the group.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I one of the experiments, she just tapped me on the shoulder yesterday because one of the experiments they want to use Mural, but she said it's a bit of a hot mess right now. So I'll be meeting with them and trying to figure out. I don't know what they're trying to do, but I would feel horrible if it was just some confusion from Mural behavioral stuff. So I'll see if I can get it sorted out. But or find out, oh no, what you're trying to do would be impossible to do, but at least give them that peace of mind as quickly as possible.
Yeah, one thing that I love in Mural and in work like this is you can see people working there. You can zoom in and come back and zoom in the other side.
And also sometimes you don't need to go to, intervene or to, like just poking people to, because you are seeing that they are producing. So I like that. And also as a facilitator, we can see what is the content there, what they are discussing, and then so we can adapt our agenda as we go. So we can, talk something else that we didn't plan before because they are talking about it. And so I like that.
Yes. No, I think we're edging closer to a facilitation dashboard where you're not having to do this crazy screen management stuff, and you can really just focus almost all of your energy onto the cohort as opposed to being divided between the chat and the breakouts and the thing and the
Yeah, and I think when we work with co-facilitators, it helps a lot.
Yes.
Because you don't have to be, focused in so many things at the same time. And also different perspectives. I like that. And also like a woman and a man, and you have like different perspectives as well. So
absolutely. In fact, this presentation I gave for Jim and I gave for Elise's the kickoff, the symposium, and that two voices, even though it was two white guys, I always appreciate, like, I don't mind doing all the talking, but that's a burden on the listener.
Yeah, it's good to have some variations.
Exactly.
Same voice, same style. So if you just vary that,
it actually helps. it's part of the engagement. It's not just, so much wonderful growth happens as a facilitator when you just take the ego and really remove it from the equation. You're like, well, what works and what works with this group and what, it's when you start focusing on, am I doing okay? And is my hair okay? It's like, the energy goes wrong. You get stressed out. Everyone disengages.
Yeah. Carolina and I have been working for more than 20 years together. So it's been a long journey.
That's wonderful.
And we think differently. So we don't agree all the time, which is good.
Yeah. Well,
Now we manage.
Yeah, we're using a lot of the whispering out loud with the group. And sometimes we said, oh, let's do that. And then he said, no, this. And then we start like a little discussion and then, okay, move for this one. And it's very good. And the feedback, it's that people like that because it's a real thing.
Yes.
And we are kind of going with the group. So.
Yeah, offering options. Sometimes I see a map with some options in my head and Carolina sees another options. So we offer to the group so we can go here and there. What does make sense for you? Oh, let's go here and then go there. Okay, so here we go.
Yeah, you've reminded me an insight I had when I was teaching a lot of Luma stuff in person. It was a show. Right? You had the script, you knew where you had to be at the end of day one, at the end of day two, and you couldn't pivot, right? There was no, you could, but it was super stressful. And when we started moving everything online and schedules became impossible to book, you had to go into breaking this one big monumental event because everyone's traveled and everyone's got a hotel for 3 days and there's this so much pressure on it being this incredible show where when you start breaking it down and we'll meet on Monday or Tuesday and then we'll come back the following Monday or Tuesday. I'm a slow thinker. And one of the things I really appreciated was, well, when I have that space, it's not just over lunch. When I'm actually trying to feed myself, I'm also trying to process everything that happened the last 3 hours. And when I can actually just have those shower moments, as my son calls them, you're sitting there taking a shower, and you're like, walking the dog moments. You come back into that next session and it is so much better and so much relevant. And maybe it's changed, but you're responding. And I think that's what's exciting is where I see teams that can be in the uncertainty long enough to find a new way to find their jam again in these new ways. Super.
It reminds me of the one experiment that we run many times with groups, especially when we are doing immersions in liberating structures. We ask the group to physically move in the room. So on one side, it's Cirque du Soleil. It's that scripted, perfect, beautiful, all planned. And on the other side of the room, it's like carnival on the streets, completely unscripted, follow the flow. So move yourself and be mindful of how much there or here. Where do you prefer to work or where you are more effective? So when people move, and then we throw the question, so how can we get the best of both worlds? How can we be beautiful and precise as Cirque du Soleil, but also flexible and adaptable at the same time?
Yeah.
But it's funny, we have natural preferences, right?
Yeah.
And there's no wrong or good or right or wrong. It's just, it is what it is.
Exactly.
I am more the Cirque du Soleil style and Carolina is more for the carnival side. So.
Well, when I was coming up to speed on how to do the Luma training, I had 3 co-teaches that I had to do before I could get certified. And each of them were with a dear friend of mine, Jonathan Ball, who was at Design Academy or the UK Design Council when they were doing the work that manifested as the double diamond. And he's got the fantastic British accent, and he's got this just huge gobs of shocking white hair. And it was like learning to present as a Shakespearean actor, right? He hates it when I say that, but I was like, he was just so elegant and so in control. And I was appreciative because that I learned the chops and how to do the work. But then I taught with another friend of mine, Steve Potter, and he's a wild animal. He'd hop up on the tables. He'd go over to people's sticky notes and he'd just crumple one up and throw it on the floor and go, this isn't precious, do another one. And, you know, and I was like literally in shock going, you can do that, you know? But I realized now I can find myself in the spectrum of ways of being. And because I can't be Jonathan. I mean, I had confidence when I was emulating, but it also wasn't authentic.
Mhm.
And I just don't have it in me to do the Steve Potter jumping on the desks wild man stuff.
Mhm.
But I had a mohawk. I played in a punk band. I can go a little bit, you know.
Mhm.
So finding that authentic, dynamic space to be in and experimenting, being pushed by a comrade who will say, hey, I should try a little improv or, you know, try it differently and keep going out of your safe zone in a way where you don't completely break the experience, of course.
Yeah, ruin the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love when someone in the team say, can I try something?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, please. Well, that was that magic moment in the control the room where they said, oh, well, if they're going to be eating lunch, we're going to do our own unconference. And they kind of manifested an unconference in the middle of the conference. Like, yeah, we'll set that up and make that happen. And
Yeah,
It's
love
a
it.
observation here. So the breakout 2, it's just like going crazy on a device.
Lots of devices.
And so I was reading those devices.
I were you.
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
And I think that the breakout one also, but they are putting a green post-it, right?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was just, it's amazing. It's
I
so
love, yeah.
Just a heads up, you have, when they come back, we have 90 minutes for
Okay.
the
So
time.
do just a quick, what's your word of advice? What was your pain point, word of advice? And then we can take it back up a level and let them know that we're going to find a way to park this board where you can keep referring to it and extend it.
Yeah, and I'll make the closing in sync with Mural.
Okay, yeah, so I'll put 9 minutes on the timer as soon as we come back.
Nice.
In Mural, yeah, so we'll have a record of it.
Yeah, they'll be here in 8 seconds.
All right, cool. I'm gonna go ahead and put 9.
Here they are.
All right, welcome back. Let's see, do we have everyone? All right, so I want to hit our mark and I don't want to run over. So we've got about 8 minutes. So I want to do a really tight share out from each group. And then I'm willing to hang on, you know, Fernando will close us, but I'm willing to hang out if folks want to do that afterwards. But I'd love to hear from each group briefly. What was your pain point? And what was your, let's just say your best piece of advice? Because it looks like you've got a lot of great advice in there. So could I get a volunteer from Breakout 1?
Yeah, I have Allison and Josephine from Breakout Room 1.
What was your pain point and what's one piece of advice? You have some great ones there, but what's the one piece of advice you'd like to share?
Allison, do you want to go?
Sure. Well, we talked quite a bit about kind of just gut checking whether to do it at hybrid. And so maybe one thing that stuck out most to me is just gathering input from particularly online participants from past experiences to really glean what are ways that you can make the experience a one experience as opposed to two experiences in one meeting, right? So really how to make it collaborative and getting the two groups engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, wonderful. It reminds me of someone brought up Priya Parker and that notion of you're designing 3 experiences, one for in-room, one for online, and then one for what happens between the two. Yeah, so I really like that. Thank you. Breakout 2, what was your pain point and what's one piece of advice you'd like to share?
Yeah, we have Amanda, Romy, Spee, and Steve. It's a bigger group. One at a time.
Don't be bashful.
I'll go more
Yeah.
so because this was a pain point that I feel. I didn't have any good advice, so the advice all came from others here. So just a disclaimer up front. So our pain point was it's hard to bring people's attention back to what we're doing, and those transitions can be a little bit challenging. One piece of advice.
Or a favorite. I know they're all good.
Okay. This wasn't a collaborative decision, but I'm going to say having someone to be either in both spaces or as a liaison between them anyway, and be able to have someone handling each so that they aren't left out in the cold.
Love that. Yeah. And you've reminded me each time I've done Control the Room, I've had an agent with feet on the ground in that space while I'm remote. And it made all the difference in the world. Yeah. Thank you, Breakout 2. All right, Breakout 3. What's your pain point and one piece of advice?
Our pain point was tied to the fact that the virtual folks hang up because the meeting's over, and then other people linger, and maybe there's a continued conversation and an aha moment that happens after. And so we talked about the importance of, that might be happening because you don't have enough reflection time built into your structured agenda. So how do you think about building in structured and unstructured reflection time more formally, and also having a buddy system in case there is any of that to keep people connected so you're not the only conduit.
Fantastic. I love you. I love that notion. We did something like that with an area for people to share that like LinkedIn profiles or social media profiles, like so people that actually wanted to connect could put it out there, and then they adapted it on the fly, and people were drawing lines and saying, I'd like to meet you, and well, I'd like to meet you. And so they actually had their own way to continue a conversation afterwards. But I love the intention of pairing up for capturing the thinking that happens after the end of the session and capturing that somewhere. And to that end, we're going to find out how to get this board from my workspace into a workspace where Fernando can host it and make it available, and you can keep this, riff off it, use it, extend it, refer to it. It's all what I'm going to be taking notes from the generative stuff you've done, and I thank you very much for participating in all this, because I learn every time I open a conversation to gifted people like you that have so much experience in the field. So I'm going to be mindful. We have 3 minutes left, and I know you need to close, Fernando. So I'll say thank you very much to everyone. Please reach out on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect, and thank you very much for a delightful morning.
Mark, do you have time for a question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hang out. So yeah.
Okay. If you have some time to linger, then I'll ask the question.
Absolutely. I won't go anywhere until everyone else goes somewhere. How's that?
Oh, okay, thanks. I was just curious. I was discussing with my group that I'm very stressed about a hybrid experience that I have to facilitate next week, where I suspect there will be disproportionately a large number of people in a room, maybe 80% to 90%, and then a few people in the virtual room. So I'm just tossing around ideas where if I'm seeking input, and let's just say there's about 15 people in total, then would it be better just to have more of an open question versus putting people in small groups so that the virtual people can hear what the in-person people are hearing, versus having people in the virtual room kind of chat together in a breakout room and then people in person butting up and so on?
Okay, a couple questions in response. Do you have the ability to be in the room, or do you have to be remote?
Well, it's one of those things where they're like, we strongly suggest you come in person, therefore, and then we try to have like food there too. But it seems like there's still a few people who are like, I can only join remote.
That's right. But you as a facilitator specifically, are you going to be in the room?
Oh, yes, I'll be in the room, and I have somebody who can also help me manage the Zoom room.
There's, I don't know if this is the best answer, but what came to mind was something like the liberating structure that kind of takes small huddles, almost like one-on-one, and then you kind of build it up to a room sentiment. And you could also do an opposite funnel where you have a 1 or 2 questions that are shared out with folks from online, calling specifically for someone to share something online. If you're having trouble with things being generated that can be seen in the space and online, then you might want to leverage the chat and have someone who can keep an eye on the chat and make sure that if someone shares something in the chat, that gets captured, on a physical sticky and added as well. So you're actively bridging as a reminder that there are these remote people, and you're just the best you can do is just continually remind folks and actively invite the participation. But I think if it gets down to it, if you have to do breakouts, I would definitely allow the remote folks to huddle together, because they're going to naturally be adapted to that exchange through Zoom or whatever, and then do table groups or whatever. But if you have 2 table groups and a remote, then you're going to share out from all 3 groups, right? So you treat them as an equal in a share back or something. And you just try and normalize this and keep reminding folks, trying to keep bridging the communication. I don't know if that really answered your question, but that's kind of what came to mind.
No, it does. And I was tossing around that idea as well, because if I assume that there was maybe less than 3 people virtually, and there was about 15 in the group, then I thought then the 15 could be like working a triad or working a double to talk. And I guess that's the question of, is that enough? If there's 15 people, is that a good way to also split them up in small groups?
I would do it intentionally as a forcing function to allow whatever the quantity of remote folks is to kind of equate the size of a small breakout team.
Okay.
And then the mental model is kind of like, yeah, they're just another team. Not like, oh, and then there are those 3 people that we ignore, Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful.
Oh, wonderful. And good luck. Good luck on your session.
Thank you.
You'll do great.
Oh, thanks for that confidence. Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for making the time to share your experience and guide these folks in this exploration. So thank you.
You bet. Happy to be here. Great to see folks I've seen before and meet folks for the first time. And I'm so happy that you have this cohort and these regular events. They're wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming and contributing. And hope to see you next time with Romy. She'll be the next guest facilitator.
Yeah.
So we have a spoiler in the practice.
What's your topic?
What's the
Ooh.
topic?
It's about experiences and how what does it really mean to curate and create experiences? Because we talk a lot about experiential learning, but what really makes and breaks an experience? So does that sound interesting to you? We can always change it. You're the audience. We want to know what you're actually interested in doing.
I'll be back. That sounds fascinating to me.
Yeah, come, Mari, come join us.
Delightful.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. I just wanted to get a feel, meet some of the people. Now I'm excited even more to see you next month.
Nice. This month, actually.
You're right. We're already in March. It's this month.
What's the date, folks? So I can drop it in right away.
It's 28th, right?
Yes.
Let me just double check.
Same time?
Yeah, actually, we changed for Mark because of some things came up, but it's Tuesday, March 28th, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific.
And I will send you the blurb today, Fernanda. Sorry, I haven't done that yet.
Thank you, guys. Have a lovely end of the day for you.